What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 4 Dummies, and tonight I am joined with the other 3 dummies. I have Mr. Robert Detoff.
Hello, yeah!
Mr. Chisk1.
Yeah, what's up?
And Mrs. Skullface.
Hello.
And tonight we are going to be talking about the current state of Xtransbots. They have had a number of releases in the last couple weeks, but if you want the uncut version of this episode, please feel free to subscribe to Patreon. Anyway, so I will start, and I'm going to start with one word, but I am going to lead up to it. So last year I bought that Omnibot, and the foot broke on me, and we can debate back and forth as to whether or not that's just me being terrible at transformations or it having structural issues, but I do review a lot of figures. So
why not both?
Why not both? At least, right? So this year, we started off with a very strong release, which was the Long Haul, in my opinion. And then the 2 Battle Chargers, Runabout and Runamuck, which are, I think, good figures, but not the best Transformers. So I say that to say this. My criticism of Xtransbots and where I think they find themselves mostly in a pickle is I think their biggest Achilles heel is that they're inconsistent.
Right, I agree. Like my initial thought, and I had said it earlier, but my initial note was they know how to make a good figure, but they don't. Like
Not
there's always
consistently or never?
No, not consistently.
They're consistently inconsistent.
It's just they have the makings for everything to be right, and then it's just the execution just isn't great.
I really think it's a bummer their Stunicon set, because all of those bots work pretty well. I think Motormaster is the weaker link just because there's like a issue in the waist that causes some breakage on some people. But all 4 of those Limbots are good, and if you don't break your Motormaster, I think he's great as well. They transform easily, you can flip them back and forth, blah, 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 and then the combined mode was a complete disaster and cost more money than people were initially expecting. You know, but once again, inconsistent, right?
So, I mean, my 2 cents, I don't really collect Xtransbots much. Like, I don't care about Runabout and Runamuck.
Well, you buy it. You bought the Jansen, you bought the Springer, you buy it all.
Yeah,
the Jansen was okay.
It's just, so I felt like it just out of it. Like, I just lost interest because of that. Like, those all seemed blah to me. I don't feel the need to, like, just complete the collection for the sake of completing it. Like, I'm happy if I never get those.
Do you think that's a Xtransbots issue, or that's a season 4 and beyond issue?
I think Xtransbots issue because they needed to like mix in exciting stuff, just obviously exciting stuff. But because it's a season 3, season 4 issue, you know what I mean? It's like both.
Because what?
No, I think it's okay. Ultimately, all of these releases are blah to me because it's season 3, season 4.
Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
What I'm trying to say though is Xtransbots, Keith, knowingly timed the releases like this, and that also made me like feel blah about collecting XTB. You know what I mean?
So
it's a little bit of both.
So I think that like this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think that's where Xtransbots should be trying to live
in season 3 and season 4.
Yep.
I mean, what season 1, season 2 bots have they done?
Cliff Jumper, Inferno. They've done Megatron. They have a Ironhide coming, Trailbreaker. I include the movie in season 1 and season 2.
Right.
They did Cosmos. They did Wind Charger. They've done a lot. You know, I think that they should try to stay in the obscure, because like it does seem like Fans Toys and them have this like pissing contest.
Yeah. And we suffer for it.
We 100% suffer for it. And I think that they should just leave it alone. Like, take these Runabout and Runamuck. They're not the greatest releases that Xtransbots has ever done, but they are super satisfying because no one else has done them, and probably no one else will.
Especially if they do them, good enough.
Right.
That's like, you don't need to. That's what I have too. My other note is they're good adjacent. Like, I don't think they're a bad company, and I think their figures look good. They just, again, it's just weird little things that just are always like, I feel like they run at it and dedicate everything to it until they hit like 80%, and then they hand it off to somebody who finishes the last 20% and just ruins it.
Is it consistently the same complaints you have about all of them, or is it inconsistently?
No, I would say that the complaints are consistent. That it's usually legally the transformation.
Right.
And it's little stupid decisions.
That doesn't work, or that is a pain in the ass, or
a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, doesn't feel finished a lot of times, feels overcomplicated. There's these two figures that I just got from them, Runabout and Runamuck, where a ton is sacrificed. A ton, including a hole in one of their chests. Just a straight square cut out of one of their chests. And the only reason why it's cut out is to make room for the steering wheel in car mode. Now, the car mode has a hood that pops up, has headlights that pop up, the doors open, there's a steering wheel with seats. Who gives a shit?
Right.
Get rid of
Especially
all of that.
Sacrificing the main mode.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Right.
Any sacrifices that should be made to the car mode. You know, preserve the robot at all costs. That's the action figure. You know, there's a few where that's not the same, right? The Dinobots, that's not the same. And there's a few where like both are important. Like Prime, both is important, but it's just like because it's an alpha character. You know what I mean? But like for these really obscure characters, had they nailed the robot and kind of thrown caution to the wind with the alt modes, nobody would have skipped a beat. Everybody would have forgiven it.
What's the best Xtransbot figure?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, that long haul's in the running.
Oh, man. Well, I think just in terms of the action figure in both modes, without considering transformation, I would give it to the Junkions.
Yeah, they're up there too, but but see, the thing about the Junkions, the Junkions still have that like like the ball jointed fingers that are all wibbly wobbly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like this long haul figure is solid as a rock, and the transformation is complicated but not frustrating.
Well,
What about Transistor? Transistor to me is still.
Yep, I think Transistor's great. I mean, people go back and forth because it doesn't look like a sheet of glass, which is what everybody wants their figures to look like these days, and that's fine. I just don't like my figures to look like they were drawn with crayon. But like that figure still transforms well. If you have the painted version, it still presents well, it still looks well, it looks interesting, it's sculpted well, it comes with the appropriate accessories. Like I don't know. I don't think Xtransbots is a bad company. I just think that sometimes like they can't see the forest from the trees, and like they'll cut off their nose to spite their face.
It's gonna be interesting because again, I do agree that this long haul is really good, but it makes me nervous for the other ones for some reason.
Just because.
Yeah, just because it's like, all right, you know what I mean?
Probability.
Like,
yeah,
yeah, that's fair.
It's like which one's going to suffer? I guess that's what it's going to come to. Which one's going to suffer? Which one's going to be inconsistent?
Well, I think
you assume the two arm bots would be roughly the same, but like they're going to do them. Are they going to do them differently? So then it doesn't make sense, you know?
I think this long haul is really heavy, which makes me very concerned for combined mode for them.
But it's the core though too.
Yeah, but
You know what I mean?
anything that sits on the hips, you know, like this
All in the hips.
Yeah, it's going to sit on the hips. Like, I don't know. Anything that puts weight on the hips and ankles, like that's where it all crumbles. Shoulders, hips, and ankles.
I don't know. I just got long haul today, right? And I don't have any recent Xtransbots frustrations to compare it to. I have fans toys that I've collected recently, you know? So I pick up this long haul and I'm judging it with a fans toys feel in my hand. And like it's just like the freaking shins, how the flaps come off so loosely and how it's kind of empty. I was just like, it looks cool, but like the materials and like the just holding together, it just feels a little less.
Yeah, I don't feel that the long haul is less solid, you know, comparatively with other Xtransbots figures.
No,
my complaints about that would just be some of the aesthetic, like just the way the legs look weird to me.
Yeah,
But
so I agree with that
that's
too.
a nitpick.
But that for me is a tune issue.
Right. I don't think that's like their design. Right, it's just a nitpick. I think overall it's good.
Even their Springer, I thought their Springer was great as well. Like, you know, and their Magnus is great as well. It's just the transformation that sucks. But a lot of times it's their transformation that is like make or break in regards to like how I feel about their stuff at the end of the day.
Right. I remember especially when they did their Scourge and then that Wind Charger, like they went through a period where just like stuff was like great. It was a nightmare to have to mess with.
Yeah. And a lot of
but
times,
I feel like they're kind of coming out of that a little bit.
Ironically, a lot of time it is the feet. Like the feet on Wind Charger and all that was a nightmare. The feet on the Scourge was a nightmare. The feet on these like Runabout and Runamuck is a nightmare. The feet on Punch Counterpunch is a nightmare. Like a lot of times I feel like they don't know what to do with the feet.
I wonder if it's just for the vehicle. So yeah, but the feet on that, what was it, Fast, I think is what they call it. That they're terrible looking. They look terrible.
Yeah, both Fast and Fury. Like they both. That's Runabout and Runamuck. I don't see anybody else making those.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
and
exactly.
that's my point, is that like we all know that they have issues, right? As a company, like all companies have issues, but we know that their issues have have some prominence to them. If they stay out of the big rings, and just fight in the smaller circles, they're going to win every time.
I think they're a good company. I think they make good products. It's just, again, there's something missing that just pushes them to the very top. And it's not even materials, it's just something about it that just is never quite right. It's always misses the mark a little bit. Well, like, look at this Ironhide that's coming out. Like,
that's a whole...
Right. It's not quite right.
It's not quite right. My biggest issue is those lines in the chest. Like, my biggest issue was with the Takara was that it didn't look like a brawler. It looked like a guy with a beer belly.
Right.
This one is a chest. He has an abdomen. It's a clearly defined abdomen, where Takara didn't have an abdomen really at all. And but the problem is that you took the chest and you cut it up. It's like the one part in my mind that you have to keep kind of clean, and they cut it up.
What's the point? Like, you start at that.
Again, the Ironhide is just another example of them having, it could look right. There's parts of it that look good, and then there's parts of it that are just like, what were you guys thinking about? Like, how did you get to the point where you're like, okay, this is good enough? Is it that, this is good enough, let's just put it out? Or is it like, hey, we've invested too much money in engineering this thing, at this point we just got to cut our losses and put it out?
See, and once again, right, they're swimming in that G1 season 1, season 2 pool, right? Now, what happens? All right, so you take that model of Ironhide that they made a toy of, and you compare it to what you want of Ironhide in your head, right? And let's say the one you want in your head is a 10, and this one comes in at a 6 or a 7, okay? Now, if you take Sandstorm and you apply that same ratio, and they make a masterpiece Sandstorm figure that is a 7 out of 10, I feel like we're all over the moon. Do you know what I mean? And that's my point, is like, if they just stick to the ish that everybody thinks no one is really going to make.
Right. Well, that also goes said, if you're picking a main character, like, you better do it exactly like it's supposed to be done.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't think anybody...
And especially nowadays, when everybody wants this tune accuracy, so there isn't a lot of room for
interpretation.
Or even to improvise anything. It's like, it has to be accurate or it's going to look wrong.
Right.
You have to make a certain number of these toys, right, to break
Correct.
even. And the problem with
That's
doing
the problem.
all the C or D string characters is that you may not be able to sell that many of them. So.
Yeah. But the other problem that they're running into is that they'll announce something, Fans Toys will announce it, and then everybody will back out of the Xtransbots. And I don't know their business. I'm not privy to their books. It's none of my business, to be honest. But if they were able to do smaller runs of more obscure characters, they would have far more success. I think they could even, they could create enough, you can call it scarcity, where they could drive up the value of them and do a second run. And
did they have this
house.
Ironhide announced, or did this just kind of drop out of nowhere?
No, it was announced. It was announced at a convention last year.
Yeah.
And the announcement, so that's another thing, and this is a deep dive, but I've become privy to it. So the design program that the designer works in, it doesn't show a lot of line work. So if you go back and you look at the CAD images of Ironhide or Ratchet, they don't have that chest all broken up. But when you see the actual production copy, it's like, oh, this is all.
But they would have had to know, hey, we have the transformation requires this to be folded in half. There's going to be a panel line in there or a line in there.
But it's not in the CAD file.
Right.
I'm saying that every time they release a CAD image, it sets the audience up for false hope.
I gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think the Ironhide will still do well because you don't have any options. You know what I mean? And so maybe that's kind of the benefit.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to do well or not. I planned on buying it. I'm not now.
Why?
It's not a big enough improvement over the Takara for me.
Right. And that's kind of the thing. It's
all I needed it to get right was the chest. That was my biggest issue with the Takara, and it's arguably the one thing it got wrong. So, I'm not going to replace my Takara.
And it still has wonky sides. It's
I don't hate the sides.
Really by the chest, I mean.
No, specifically by the chest. I don't hate that. That to me is
it looks very Takara?
No, I think it looks Takara circa 2014, but not Takara now. And I'm okay with that.
The Ironhide a little bit like that. You know what I mean?
So I don't think so.
I may not be understanding exactly what we're saying, but I see where it's oh yeah, we're Takara, the way they would do some of the color breakup with a dark gray plastic on the flanks and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but I don't really feel
so I
they
could
do
see
that.
that. For me, it's in line with Grapple and Inferno.
Yeah,
I think the legs are very Takara,
and I think the legs they look proportionally too thin.
Yeah, but so do the Takaras. You know, that's chasing that cartoon accuracy. Like,
and I hear you, and I guess that's my thing about it. You know, if I could give any advice, is like, look, you can make it cartoon accurate, but just make it proportionate to itself. Just because the cartoon legs are super thin.
I think I can make the argument that a lot of the cartoon images aren't proportionate to themselves.
No, I understand that, but they don't look. They look weird in the cartoon.
Agreed.
Anybody who wants it to be exactly like the cartoon, like exactly like it looked wrong, I want it to look wrong in real life too. It's crazy.
If you're gonna
I can't believe that that's what people are really looking for.
Well, like the thing is trying to understand, like, because even Fans Toys is better at it, right? Where they take the toon accuracy and they give this like, all right, we're gonna take the toon accuracy and we're gonna make an attempt to add this layer of bad attitude on top of it, right? And sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not, in my opinion. But it's an attempt. I think Xtransbots is often normally doing a more one-for-one, you know? And I think that's comes down to style, and style comes from the artist, you know? And that's what you're really seeing is this is Xtransbots style and this is Fans Toys style.
So I think why is Xtransbots would be successful is I think maybe it will come down to price point. Like I think if Fans Toys made an Ironhide, it's going to be more expensive than the Xtransbots one.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. But like if they just stay out of Fans Toys' way, like, and I know that sounds cold.
But if they're putting them out first and then Fans Toys
that's
release
fine.
them, that's not really
correct. That's fine. But oftentimes, like, say you take these Constructicons, so they're putting them out first, but Fans Toys has already announced theirs. So Xtransbots are hitting the street first, but people know the Fans Toys is coming.
I think there's the fact that there's only just two companies is like, look, you're going to get, even if you only get 40% of the market share, you know what I mean? Like, I think.
Yeah, but guess what? They're getting 100%. They're getting 100% of the runabout and run amok market share.
Right. No. Well, right. I hear you. But maybe that's what funds, this other stuff.
I don't know. I don't think at this current spot, Xtransbots has what it takes to go toe-to-toe with Fans Toys. So I think they should just stay out of the way. I don't think it's going to be beneficial to them in the long run.
Or in the long haul.
Tax brackets. I want to see
man figure.
The visual representation of a New York guy saying the word because.
And Ronald Reagan. I mean,
yeah.
And Jimmy Carter and a peanut. Shout out to Tyler F.